Hello everyone, welcome to Finecraft Woodworks. Today I am going to walk you through from start to finish on how I made this beautiful coffee table. So right here is some shots after I put on 2 coats Rubio Monocoat along with a single coat of their maintenance oil. Once this is fully cured, I will put on a nano ceramic coat on top of this. You'll see this at the end. But anywho, sit back, relax, enjoy as I show you from start to finish how I made this beautiful coffee table. So starting here, I need to break down some lumber. So here I'm just squaring up the edges so I can do a glue up. It's really important to have the edges perfectly square so when you do the glue up, everything lines up. So here's just another shot of me squaring up the ends here. And I don't just want to glue it together, I also want to do a type of joinery just to help increase strength a little bit. So I am doing some dowel joinery here. It did make for a little bit of a stressful glue up because I didn't, you'll see that I didn't think about that when you put the dowels in, the glue didn't have anywhere to go, and so the dowels didn't go all the way in, so I had to in a moment of panic, get out a saw just to cut the dowels a little bit shorter, and it was stressful. But lo and behold, I got it. So I was very, very happy with that. Definitely sweating there a bit. Just making sure everything's flat. That's really important for glue ups. That'll just make you have less work later. Here I'm using a block plane, just getting rid of some of that excess glue. Now, I don't have a router flattening jig, so what I'm doing is I'm marking the high spots with using a straight edge, and then you'll see here in a little bit, I'm going to use a good old-fashioned hand plane and work on straightening this board. This is like, I don't know, it's like a $40 hand plane I got at Home Depot, but if you sharpen the blade and keep a sharp strop at night, now and then, it really helps. Good old way to see if it's sharp is if you can shave some arm hair. And it passed, so I think I did pretty good there. So not gonna lie, this process definitely took a hot minute. I know with the wizardry of video editing it looks quick, but it was definitely a long process, but I got there. And I would encourage to really take your time to really take your time, especially in the early steps, because if you kind of rush past trying to get it flat, you're going to pay for it later and you're going to be fighting it the whole way. So what I'm doing here is really trying to take my time to get as flat as I reasonably can. Now I'm sanding it with 60 grit sandpaper. This isn't like the final sanding by any means. I just want to get it flat so then I can examine, see where I'm at, and do some later stages of, yeah, you'll see with the video what I'm saying here. So more sanding and more sanding and more sanding. Okay, so this is one step that I did have quite a bit of trouble. This is a circular saw I borrowed from my neighbor. I have no idea how to use it. I was trying to square up the end of the table, and I was just having trouble with this thing from day one. This particular one was a really underpowered saw. I do like Ryobi, just not that specific saw. And yeah, I was using it the wrong direction here, and I didn't know that at the time though. I was still having trouble, so I ended up switching to a jigsaw. And this is a Festool jigsaw. It's a nice saw, but for whatever reason, the blade started to melt and was throwing out sparks, and you can see how it did not give a straight cut and it melted that plastic there. And the blade's totally straight. So that didn't work. So then I was like, okay, maybe I can like jerry rig something up with the table saw. Kind of felt dangerous and I ended up not going with that. So what I did is I ended up using my router and just making many passes with, I don't even know what kind of bit you call it, but I got it. A little bit of chip out, so I'm just fixing it here with some glue. You'll see here in a second I use some sawdust as well. I apologize for the shaky video here. It's kind of hard to do that in video at the same time. But you'll see later in the build that this actually worked really well and you can't even tell that there was chip out. So I was very, very pleased. So what I'm doing now is I'm getting ready to cut some pieces for the lower section of the coffee table. And you'll see what I mean by that at the end, but basically you have like your upper section, which is like the main table, and then there's a little lower thing as well. So just trying to measure and figure out how long I want this to be using crosscut sled. I will say, if you have a table saw, make yourself a good crosscut sled. It's really handy. I did get a little bit burning there, as you saw when I was ripping the sides, and ended up having to adjust the fence, but I got it figured out. So next thing, kind of with how you saw earlier, I do want to use some dowel joinery. A, that helps with alignment, and B, that also really helps with strength as well. Probably wouldn't need the strength benefits, because I mean this wood is an inch and, I don't know, inch and a quarter, maybe inch and a half thick. So, but at the same time, better safe than sorry, you know. So there are jigs to do dowel joinery, and I am gonna get one. I just didn't, or I don't have one at this point in time. But as long as you do careful measurement, you can totally get it. Here I'm using a little awl to mark a little hole so my drill won't wander when I drill the hole. So yes. Here's using a brad point. The reason I like brad points is you have that little point that'll kind of grab into that hole so it won't wander again. Wandering can be a problem. So yeah, that's why I do that. And you'll also see I learned from my mistake the first time. Oh, really quick, I'm just showing here that I got them all perfect. So as I was saying, I learned from my mistake from the first glue up, and you'll see I cut a little notch into the dowel, and so that allows when I put the dowel into the hole, the glue can escape through that little channel. And yeah, when I do the glue up, it works much better this time. So yeah. So it's totally okay to make mistakes. We all do it. Just do your best to learn from them. So taking it out of the clamps, and now I just got to get it flat like I did before. I do use my electric planer or electric hand planer a little bit, and that just helps speed it up. Here I am squaring off the ends. Again, another benefit of having a solid crosscut sled. I do want to make a bigger one eventually, but this one does serve its purpose, and I got it perfectly square, so that's nice. So here, starting to do some more sanding. For any of you who have made, well, really any wood projects before, you'll know it's just kind of death by sanding. I think most people don't love it, but it's just one of the necessary evils of life, or woodworking, I guess. You got to do it, and I will say, make sure you take your time with this. If you don't, you'll pay for it later. Don't skip grits, you know, just slowly work through each and every grit, doing the sides here. Another little trick is you can take a pencil and kind of mark the whole surface that you're sanding, and once you removed all the pencil marks, you know you're good. So here's just a close-up shot of the side. So just more sanding. There were a few little voids, and so I was just using the good old glue and sawdust trick. I'm going ahead and routing the sides. I did make a little mistake here, you'll see in a second. When I flipped the table, I think I had my metal ruler underneath or something. So you'll see in a second, I put a nasty gouge in the table. Thankfully, it was on the underside, so that's nice. So I ended up using some glue and some sawdust, and it actually worked really well in that when I was finishing the table, or just like later down the road, I forgot I had those marks just because it blended in so well at the end. You'll see at the end of the video. With routing, got a little bit of chip out, not too bad. Just, again, glue and sawdust. When I say sawdust, you want to use sawdust from the same species of wood. So I'll get some like 400 grit sandpaper and sand the top a bunch just to get some really fine sawdust. I think the finer it is, the better. It kind of fills in all those micro voids and stuff. And So yeah, so here's part of the metal hardware that I'm going to be using. I traced out exactly where I wanted it, and I want to cut a recess with the router so it'll sit flush. I should have built some sort of like fence or something to get a perfectly straight line. I didn't, and again, you know, this is just one of those things you learn as you go. So the whole idea was I'm routering as close to the line as I feel safe to get, and then I'm going to hand chisel the rest. And this method works. Hand chiseling is a ton of work. There's definitely an art form to it as well. Stropping helps. Keep your tools sharp. Stropping really makes a big difference. So here, I obviously sped up the video a bit, but you'll see I'm just trying to use the chisel to straighten up the lines, get it a little more clean, and then after that, I'll use some sandpaper to try to clean it up some more. So here's after a lot of work, you know, there's still a little sawdust and stuff on the side. It's not perfect, but it looks pretty good. And, you know, once you have the metal hardware and the few burn marks on the sides, you won't be able to see. So, yeah. And then the moment of truth, seeing if it fits. Phew, it fits. What you don't know is it actually took like 3 or 4 attempts. First couple times is a little bit small, so I like sand the sides a little bit more. And you'll also see later on when I bolt it down and stuff that there is some extra room, and that is to allow for seasonal wood movement. Important to do that. So here I'm drilling the holes for threaded inserts. I really recommend having some sort of like drill stop bearing, whatever the heck you call it, just because you don't want to accidentally drill through the other side. That would pretty much ruin your piece. But here I'm just putting the threaded inserts. These little suckers are very hard to screw in, and I felt like this table has a bazillion of them. But the nice thing is once they're in, once they're secure, they're going to be there for life. And you can take the hardware on and off as many times as you want, and you don't have to worry about stripping the wood. I went ahead and I did put just a little dab of wood glue. I don't really think it's necessary, to tell you the truth, with how tight they were, but at the same time, I'd rather be safe than sorry. I feel like a lot of the things I did with this table, you could call it like, you could call it overkill, but you know, rather be safe than sorry. So for the finish, this is the fun part, using Rubio monocoat. I am going to use 2 coats here. I know it says monocoat. I'll also use this maintenance oil, which I'll talk about a little bit. But I know it says monocoat, but Cam at Blacktail Studios, he has a technique where you do 2 coats. I guess you can do as many coats as you want, but you use a maroon buffing pad in between each coat, and that really helps get rid of any imperfections, helps up the sheen, all that stuff. So yeah, first thing you want to do is you want to give it a good mix. Make sure you mix up all those oils and waxes and stuff, and it is a 3-to-1 ratio, so 3 parts of the yellow stuff to 1 part of the clear stuff. So give it a good mix. And then a moment of truth, first time using Rubio. It is so satisfying to put on. So what you're going to do is you're going to pour it onto your surface, then use a little card spreader to spread it around. Took me a little bit to kind of figure out a good technique to spread it. At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. Just you want to coat the whole surface, and then you'll see here in a little bit. There we go. So got a buffing pad with a sander, and I am just wanting to coat the whole surface. Then you're gonna let that sit for, I don't know, 10 minutes, then look at it, inspect it with a light, see if there's any dry spots, add some more if you need to, and then you want to buff it off, and that's very important. So this is the other little piece. Again, putting some on, I'll spread it around, I'll buff it in, wait a hot minute. By a hot minute, I mean like 10 minutes, and then you're gonna buff it off. And one thing that Cam at Blacktail Studio says, which I totally agree with, is you can't wipe off too much, but you can't leave too much on. And what that means is when you wipe off the excess, you want to take your time and make sure you wipe off all of the excess. What I ended up doing is I'd wipe off as much as I could. I'd let it sit for a few hours and then I would come back and there would be a little bit more finish that had oozed out of the wood that I'd wipe off. So keep checking. Here I'm just doing the same thing to the top. Super satisfying to see the grain come alive. And you'll see as this video goes that while it looks good now, it looks even better when I do the second coat. And then when I do the maintenance oil, that just helps it pop a little bit more. And then at the very end of the video, I'm going to use the N3 Nano finish, which is it's like a micro ceramic finish that goes on top of your finish. But anyways, it's made by Blacktail Studios. I've heard super good things about it. It ups the sheen, it ups the protection, and you'll see at the end of the video that it just really makes this piece pop. So just right now, I'm just wiping off all the excess. I went through like a bazillion of these blue shop towels doing this, and then I'm trying to remember, I think I waited about 72 hours between the first and the second coat, I think. Yeah, so anyways, if you want specifics on how to do this, just Google Blacktail Studio finish workshop, and I think it'll come up. And his workshop's free. He also does an epoxy one. I'm going to buy that one of these days. I haven't yet, but I'm really excited. So here's just some shots of after the first finish. Looks very good. I'm very happy, but just wait till we put the second coat on and the sheen's gonna be so much better. So this is second coat, so maroon buffing pad. You wanna buff the whole surface. And what's key here is you wanna get a uniform buffness or scratchness or whatever you wanna call it. You want it to be uniform. If you don't get it uniform, then your second coat is going to go on non-uniform and be kind of splotchy. And you can say a little bit. I was holding, I recently bought a Ryobi just light, and it's just this light stick, and it really helps. So here's that second coat, and you'll see the color just comes right back and then some when you start to rub it in. And take your time to buff this on. You can also apply a little bit of pressure. This is a wax finish, so a little bit of heat is just gonna help it soak into the wood. Also, pro tip, when you're doing the second coat, you don't need nearly as much finish. I didn't realize that, and I mixed up way more than what I needed. Yeah, so here's the shot at the second finish, and you can see it's just that much shinier. It is looking absolutely gorgeous. And then after this, I'm going to use the Rubio maintenance oil. That's just for if there's any spots that I missed, if there's anything that's just not saturated enough with Rubio, this will get that. And so with the maintenance oil, you don't need to buff it, or excuse me, you don't need to use the maroon pad. You're just going to put a little bit, buff it on with a buffing pad like you saw earlier, and wipe the excess off. But this is looking really good here. I'm honestly really, really, really happy with how it's turning out. And to tell you the truth, once I put the maintenance oil on, I do think there was a slight increase in sheen, just making it, that much better. But especially when you get the light and get close up, I mean, its grain's beautiful. And I'm also really happy with how the grain matched with the two boards glued together. I tried to match the grain so you wouldn't really be able to see a seam. So for this maintenance oil, I forgot to film for the main table, so I filmed the little guy here, and there's nothing fancy to it. Just put some on and then wipe it off. And I do use the sander buffing pad. Again, heat will help. And then here in a second, I will get a shot again of everything, but here's just wiping it off, and then the next step is going to be the nano finish. So at this point, you can see everything looks really good, and honestly, you can't go wrong if you just stop here at the Rubio monocoat. But I want to add a little more protection, a little more sheen, especially with a coffee table that's going to get used a lot. I want it to have that added protection. So the system I'm using is N3 Nano by Blacktail Studios. Here, this is just a basically alcohol it's cleaning, and then we're going to start with the hard coat here. So what this does is this is going to add a very significant layer of protection to the table. It also increases the sheen, which is really nice. You can see putting it on, I mean, it just bumps up that sheen like crazy, which is super cool. So you basically wipe it on, and then once you feel a little more resistance, which is the solvent is starting to evaporate, then you're going to go ahead and buff. You're going to go ahead and lightly buff it off. Now, you don't want to buff super hard like you do with Rubio, because you still want to leave some of that good stuff on there. You just want to lightly wipe it all off. So you'll see that here in a second. And for any of you guys out there who hasn't or has been thinking about trying this finish, I really do recommend it. I know it is expensive, but you'll see some of the shots here at the end that it makes this table look so much better. All right, so I'm starting to feel a little more resistance here. So in a second here, I'm going to go ahead and stop. And one thing I recommend is having a really good light on hand. I have this Ryobi light, and it honestly works really well. So I'm just looking for any spots that I missed, and it's looking good here. So I'm going to take a microfiber cloth, and first I'm just using the edge of this, and if there's any excess, that's just going to help wipe it off. Very, very light pressure, not even my hand weight. I mean, just very light. And now I'm going to take a microfiber, and I'm going to wipe off any of the excess. Again, you're buffing very lightly here, and also make sure you don't use the same side of the microfiber more than once here, because once the finish cures a little bit, it can actually scratch your table. So here I'm just doing the other side of the table. You want to work in small enough chunks that you can apply it all before the solvent starts to dry. And it is a self-wetting solution, so there won't be any blend line in between each layer, like the first and second half of the table. So again, just buffing it off, and you just make sure you buff off that line where the two areas meet, and it blends right in. So you can see here that it is looking really, really good, but we're going to make it look a little bit better. So here's the top coat, and just really quick, I did 3 layers of the hard coat. I just figured you guys didn't want to watch that 3 times in a row, but after that, now I'm applying the top coat. This angle really wasn't the best to be able to see the difference, but the top coat doesn't do as much for protection, but it really ups the sheen. And so this helps the table look really good, and you'll see again here in the end where you can really see that. So I did 2 coats of the top coat, let it dry for a bit, and now I'm going to put the hardware on. I have a bazillion of these threaded inserts to screw in, but I'm really glad that the cutouts fit. Everything's coming together really good, and here is the finished product, and I am absolutely so happy with how it turned out. I mean, I think it's amazing. I'm really excited to share this with you. I have this listed on my Etsy, so I will post a link in the video description, and feel free to check it out. And here's just a couple more pictures. For those of you who made it to the end, thank you so much for watching, and you have a fantastic and blessed day. Bye.